Tonight, fiscal warning. A major credit rating agency sends a shot across the bow 1 week out from a potential U.S. default over the debt limit. Plus, failure to launch.
We've got just a massive number of people online.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis makes an announcement that breaks Twitter. And 1 year since 19 children died in a Texas school shooting massacre. How to train staff and students to recognize threats and react.
You ready? Power!
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. With the threat of default just days away, a potential dent in America's gold standard. Welcome to Faith Nation from our Washington News Bureau. I'm John Jessup. Well, 7 days from now, the United States could run out of money to pay its bills. And as the default clock ticks towards the deadline, one of the world's top credit firms warns America's perfect credit rating is at risk. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka joins us now. Matt, you're near where lawmakers and White House negotiators are finding a deal to lift the debt ceiling proving hard to come by.
Yeah, John, the Fitch credit rating agency gave the U.S.'s perfect credit score a negative warning because of the ongoing negotiations. And the way to think of it is like this. We all have our own personal credit scores, and if any of them were to go down, it could be harder to borrow money in the future. It could cost more to borrow money in the future. The same applies to the country, as well as a slew of other potential economic impacts. Now, the White House is saying this negative warning just emphasizes the need for Congress to pass a debt ceiling raise right now.
The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there. The Veterans Hospitals remain open, and that economic progress will be made, and we're going to continue to make it. Default puts all that at risk. Congressional leaders understand that, and they've all agreed there will be no default. And it's time for Congress to act now.
Now, of course, the negotiations continue, and Speaker Kevin McCarthy seemed optimistic today, more optimistic than he has in the past week or so, that a deal is close to getting done. But still, that negative warning was on his mind and the minds of his negotiators. They're all saying they're taking that warning very seriously.
I am worried about the consequences of us not coming to terms and raising the debt ceiling. For the American people, they understand the consequences of this. With more debt, it's more expensive for them in taxes, lower economic growth. So we're trying to bend the cost curve of the government for the American people.
Obviously, as the negotiations go on, Republicans are still looking at ways to slash spending. But another wrinkle today, just today, the House Freedom Caucus sending a letter to Speaker McCarthy, basically asking or demanding three things: adding border security to any deal, demanding to know how the Treasury came up with the June 1st deadline, and fast-tracking, getting back unspent COVID funds and IRS money. That last point, they said if they can get that done, they could prolong that debt ceiling deadline. On the other side, Democrats still trying to get a handful of Republicans to come over to their side, vote with them, just in case they need to take any emergency measures if the negotiations fall through. John.
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka reporting. Thank you so much, Matt. Well, Mark Hamrick is Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. Mark, always great to have you on Thursdays. So we're just a week away from a potential U.S. default. To Matt's point, we heard what lawmakers are considering as far as negotiations that maybe the administration might be able to handle. But are there tactics the Treasury Department can employ to extend that timeline to continue paying its debt obligations if it has to?
John, good to see you as always. I don't think there's a cheat code that gets us out of this per se. Most of those gimmicks have either already been used in the sense of the extraordinary measures that have been in place since early in the year, when essentially the Treasury's been more aggressive about trying to manage the budget, the outflow of funds, and to try to hold off on some payments. If we had that optimal solution in front of us, we wouldn't be so concerned about the risk of a default. So, everyone who's expressing the seriousness of the situation as they are, I think they have it right. The one variable here that could perhaps give us some more time is that we don't know when the Treasury would absolutely hit up against that X date, and there is thought to be some possibility that it's not exactly June 1st, but this should have been done a long time ago, as many others have already said.
Mark, to what extent are you familiar with, or do you know that Americans who rely on government assistance, whether that's Medicare, Social Security, or SNAP programs, how they're preparing for a potential default?
Well, it's hard to know, and many of them, John, don't really have a lot of alternatives. We have something like 70 million Social Security recipients, and many of those individuals rely on that as their primary means of retirement funding. We have others who are reliant on Medicare for their access to health care. So I think it's quite concerning that many people could face the very real prospect of not only being unable to get the medical care they need, but unable to get the food they need and the money to pay the rent. And so much the same as in the early days of the pandemic, when we saw people losing their jobs very quickly, 22 million people unemployed in just 2 months. And we saw the dominoes falling there. This would, if it cascades, could be just as severe.
All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate, thank you so much for your time and insight, for being with us tonight.
Thank you, John.
Well, the GOP primary is already in full effect after the campaign kickoff of the latest presidential hopeful. Frontrunner Donald Trump calling his fellow Floridians' entry Ron's disaster, referring to Governor Ron DeSantis' Twitter announcement alongside Elon Musk marred by major technical issues. Although the DeSantis campaign is claiming with so much interest they, quote, broke the internet. CBN's Jenna Browder has more on the growing field of candidates.
In an unconventional way to kick off a campaign, Ron DeSantis threw his hat into the ring, making it official in an audio-only Twitter announcement. The kickoff, though, got off on rough footing, including silence and crackling audio for about 20 minutes.
I think we've got just a massive number of people online.
Musk heard talking about the number of people logging into the site, and DeSantis pointing to enthusiasm for his campaign. His opponents took the opportunity to pounce, the Trump campaign calling the announcement Ron's disaster, and President Biden tweeting "This link works," leading supporters to his fundraising site. Even before the event, Inside Elections' Nathan Gonzalez questioned the rollout on CBN's Faith Nation.
The way he started this campaign is confusing or baffling to me. He had the opportunity to have his moment in the spotlight where he is on stage all to himself, and he chose an audio-only format, sharing it with Elon Musk. We'll see in the end whether that was the right decision. It's just a very curious choice.
The conversation did eventually get to policy and culture war issues. DeSantis avoided talking about Trump, but took direct aim at President Biden.
Biden's pursued inflationary policies that are hurting working people. We will reverse those policies, and we'll build an economy where working Americans can achieve a good standard of living.
And after the Twitter launch, DeSantis gave his first TV interview to Fox.
We will never waver in our defense of families and children. And as a father of a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old, I strongly believe that parents should be able to send their kids to school, have them watch cartoons, or just be kids without someone trying to shove an agenda down their throats.
DeSantis joins a growing field in the GOP primary, including Nikki Haley, who called him a Trump copycat.
He needs to be his own person. He needs to get out there and say what he believes, what he thinks. If he's just going to be an echo to Trump, people just vote for Trump.
And South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, who sat down with CBN News after he announced this week.
What I want to focus on is what America has done. That being the city on the hill that's consistent with the gospel is our responsibility and our future if we take ourselves out of it.
All of these candidates still trail Trump significantly. Polling consistently shows, though, DeSantis is his most formidable challenger. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. Stopping active shooters in schools. When we come back, how students and staff are being trained to respond to threats. Welcome back. Students and teachers in Uvalde, Texas are back in school today after closing down Wednesday to pause and remember the deadliest school shooting in state history. Marking 1 year since the massacre, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden honored those who died. At a White House candlelight event, they read the names of the 19 children and 2 teachers whose lives were tragically taken.
They'll never be gone from your heart. They'll always be part of you. And I know this as well. As unbelievable as it sounds, I promise you, a day will come when you pass that ice cream store, you pass that park, you pass that thing that brings back the memory of your son or daughter. It's going to bring a smile to your lips when you think of them before it brings a tear to your eye.
In the wake of the shooting, police have been widely criticized for the slow response and the inaccurate and conflicting accounts as to why it took 78 minutes for them to confront the shooter. A criminal investigation into the delay is ongoing. Meanwhile, the site of the shooting, Robb Elementary, has been permanently closed. Well, school shootings have now become an epidemic in America, leaving parents demanding action to keep their kids safe. Security in schools is now a $3 billion a year business, much of that spent on high-tech equipment. But as national security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports, some experts say the money would be better spent on training staff and students to recognize and respond to threats.
On April 20th, 1999, 2 students walked into Columbine High School and opened fire. In the 24 years since 13 students were killed here, there have been nearly 380 school shootings, exposing hundreds of children to gun violence and revealing an epidemic that's yet to find its cure.
Let's go! Metro Police!
In the aftermath of the Covenant school shooting in Nashville, children, parents, and officials once again find themselves struggling with how to keep schools safe.
The children of this country are demanding action. Our classrooms have become killing fields. Is that acceptable?
I don't think one piece of legislation solved this. We got to deal with mental illness.
School security has grown to a $3 billion industry, with investments in everything from video surveillance technology to bulletproof doors and electronic locks. And while technology is important, experts say it likely would not prevent the next attack.
When people are the problem, people are always going to be the solution.
Jimmy Graham is the CEO and founder of Able Shepherd, an elite active shooter training program in Denver, Colorado. Graham says it's people knowing exactly what to do in an emergency that saves lives.
So I'll walk into an institution and I'll say, can I talk to this lady right here? And I say, ma'am, what would you do if you heard gunshots? She says, I don't know. I said, well, that's where we need to start.
Drawing on his background as a Navy SEAL and involvement with the CIA's global response staff, Graham developed DEFEND. The acronym stands for Defense, Evacuate, Fortify, Emergency Medical Aid, Notify Others, and Dial 911. A strategy based on international safety protocols.
There's an unbelievably efficient model for protecting our diplomats overseas, but not our children. Right? So why is that? Because it's the same model. That model, what I've done is I've scaled it and said we don't need, some of this stuff is not applicable, but to bring that back home and place the principles, here's the defensive principle. To get to them, you have to go through me.
Able Shepherd also provides training for those likely to respond to active shooter situations, whether that be an individual, a security team, law enforcement, or even faculty. The training is reality-based, allowing those who go through it to experience live scenarios.
Gunshot, gun out, be ready, be ready, be ready. Pow! Pow! Tell him to stay down, tell him to go down.
Graham stresses that even with all the right tools, security plans won't work if school leaders don't maintain the proper environment.
The best way to describe it would be this. I get a whole faculty together and I say, whose job is it to protect this place? And everybody at the same time says, mine.
In 1999, as a first responder at Columbine, Deacon Ernie Martinez experienced the moment the country realized children weren't safe at school.
The big wake-up call was twofold, I think. Number one is their evil does exist without any reasons for it, right? And number two is it woke us up to, as not only a law enforcement community, but as a community as a whole, that everybody should participate.
Martinez, now retired after 40 years in law enforcement, is the director of deacons for the Archdiocese of Denver. Among his roles, helping schools in the Archdiocese come up with security plans.
The important thing is collaboration, leveraging assets, partnering with local law enforcement, because we have parishes and churches and schools all across northern Colorado, and everybody is in their own different financial statuses, right? So you need to partner with your local law enforcement. You need to partner with local schools, whether they're public schools or not.
It's common sense steps like training and collaboration that experts believe provide schools the best chance at stopping an active shooter, since preventing them entirely is highly unlikely.
We're unique, right? What does America have that other countries don't have? Two things. One, a Second Amendment, and two, more guns than people. By most accounts, there's over 450 million guns for just over 300 million people.
Back in 2016, research from Johns Hopkins University found even the highest priced technology did nothing to help stop mass shootings. Researchers writing, quote, "There is no universal school safety solution. No one technology will solve all school safety and security issues. The sheer number of schools and school districts across the country, with different geography, funding, building construction and layout, demographics, and priorities, make each one different."
What does school safety look like in our country? It looks as bad as Uvalde and as good as Tennessee, and everything in the middle.
Former D.C. Homeland Security Chief Donnell Harvin says it's important that people keep talking about school security, even after the news cycle moves on.
Many people are apathetic and have given up, and many people are desensitized. And we can't allow that apathy and that kind of, mindset to take hold of the fact that the next shooter is planning and there's kids in that classroom.
When it comes to school security, parents can also make a difference. The key is communication. Ask your child's school what they're doing, what they're not, and then don't stop asking until you get the right answer. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Caitlin. Artificial intelligence gone awry. New warnings about the potential dangers of technological advancements gone too far. And Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. The official start to hurricane season is 1 week away, and forecasters are warning communities along the coast to have an evacuation plan in place before the next big storm heads their way.
Hurricanes, they are more than just the cone that we see. They are storm surge. They are significant rainfall. They are carbon monoxide poisoning after. There are so many other hazards, and so you need to know what your risk is.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is forecasting more than a dozen named storms this season, including the possibility of multiple major hurricanes off the Atlantic coast. Warmer than average ocean temperatures and El Nino could make for an unusually active season. NOAA is using roughly $3 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act to invest in more advanced technologies to improve hurricane predictability. Well, as technology advances, some are sounding the alarm over artificial intelligence, claiming AI could replace millions of jobs and put our national security in jeopardy. The ominous threats have at least one CEO calling for government intervention, warning artificial intelligence could cause significant harm. CBN's Brady Carter has more.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world.
A surprise call for action from OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, clarifying the dangers of tomorrow posed by the rapidly evolving technology of artificial intelligence. Altman wants lawmakers to step in and regulate it before it's too late, even calling for a government agency to oversee the industry.
I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that.
It's been less than a year since ChatGPT was released to the world, and AI technology can already do so much more. From speech writing and tutoring to machine learning, it can create new content such as music and art. It can even create deepfake video and audio. Senator Richard Blumenthal opening the hearing with a ChatGPT-generated greeting and audio app that impersonated his voice based on Senate floor speeches.
Too often, we have seen what happens when technology outpaces regulation. If you were listening from home, you might have thought that voice was mine and the words from me. But in fact, that voice was not mine.
So it's very important that we just take it a step at a time
and develop it slowly so it doesn't ruin our lives as far as human life is concerned.
As lawmakers scramble to regulate AI technology, tech expert Burton Kelso tells CBN News that protecting yourself from this technology starts with protecting personal information.
So the thing that we have to worry about as individuals is making sure that we're not putting personal information in AI, because at any point, either through a supply chain hack or just a hack with OpenAI itself, then that information can be exposed to the dark web.
Some major fears include AI replacing millions of jobs. It could even falsify information for malicious gain or be used to erase key moments from history. However, one of the biggest concerns deals with national security.
Given that we're going to face an election next year and these models are getting better, I think this is a significant area of concern.
Rapid advances in AI tech are complicating efforts here and abroad to agree on laws that govern emerging technologies. China has already drafted regulations that could shape the future.
But at the same time, a lot of technology comes out of China. And I think one of the things that we want to prevent as a country is that China rules everything.
This is a remarkable time to be working on artificial intelligence. But as this technology advances, we understand that people are anxious about how it could change the way we live.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
Something indeed to watch. Thank you, Brody. Well, a test flight moving the world one step closer to commercial space travel. Next on Faith Nation. And we leave you tonight with this, a giant leap for mankind, or at least those who want to visit space. A test flight today took the next step toward commercial space travel. Virgin Galactic successfully flew its reusable space plane for the first time in 2 years. Unlike a rocket takeoff, Virgin's Unity 25 ship launches from a carrier plane already soaring at least 40,000 feet in the air. Today, Unity 25 took a crew of 8 people to suborbital space and back. From takeoff to landing, the trip took just over an hour and 15 minutes, marking the final test flight before the out-of-this-world trip becomes commercially available. For those of you at home, go ahead and get ready to buy your own tickets. For me, though, my feet are going to be firmly planted on ground. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Faith Nation. We hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.